All right, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am an adrenal fatigue recovery ninja, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of your Adrenal Fix. I'm really excited to be talking to you today. We are going to try to answer more of your questions on the Facebook page. If you're not a member of my Facebook group, then just click on the link that we have here. If you're watching this video or you have access to the video in my Facebook group, then you are a member. So what I try to do is try to answer questions. And today we're going to be talking about a saliva test. And this was posed by a member of the group. His name is Igal Gaboa. He is from Israel, and I am going to answer this question. So this is his saliva test, and he wants to know what kind of supplements he can be taking, if you can get better, and is recovery even possible? Can you recover on hydrocortisone and so forth? So let's start with the overview of this test first. So let's talk about first what a saliva test is. A saliva test is a way to measure the free fraction of the hormone. And the free fraction of the hormone represents 1 to 2% of the total amount of hormone that you have in the body. So one of the things I want to point out to you guys is if you've ever had a saliva test and you say my saliva test is really high, so I have high adrenals here, I have it here, I have it here, I have it here, and I have to lower my cortisol. That may or may not be true. Why is that the case? Because 1% of your total hormone does not represent 100% of your total hormone. And it's not always a one-to-one correlation that if your saliva hormone is high, then your total cortisol is high. I've made that mistake many, many times. And so we run tests now where we look at the urine test, we look at the saliva test, and we look at the blood test. We look at all three values because that way we can get a better indication of what's the total cortisol, what are the pituitary hormones, what are the free fractions of the hormones, what are the breakdown components of the hormone. The great thing about the Dutch test is the saliva test, is it does look at different times of the day. And really that's important because your cortisol output is not going to be the same at different parts of the day. And the problem with that is that if you do a cortisol test with your blood and the ranges are so broad and you do it one time in the morning and you crash in the middle of the afternoon, it's not going to pick that up. And that's a big problem. And it's not going to pick up the free fraction of the hormone that's available. And it's not going to tell you about the pituitary and the adrenals and the hypothalamus axis. And it's not going to tell you how well you're making and breaking those hormones. Are you robbing Peter to pay Paul? That's why it's really important to look at all three tests, in my opinion. Or if you have a saliva test like this, put it in perspective and realize it only has a certain amount of utility. But let's talk about the utility. So you can see that his total hormone level is quite low from a saliva point of view. It should be anywhere between 22 to, sorry, I should have had this ready for you guys already, 22 to 46. And his total, if you add all these up, 13, 15, 3, and 3, you get 18, 21, 24. So he's right at that lower end. He's in the range, but he's right at that lower. Oh, sorry, did I add that up wrong? Oh, that's the total. Sorry. His total is 5, 7, 3, and 3. So we got 12, we got 15, we got 18. My mistake. So he's 18, and he should be 22. Now, is that an adrenal fatigue problem? Perhaps. Now, people don't like the word adrenal fatigue, and doctors will say there's no such thing as adrenal fatigue. And what I would say is that may be correct because the best way that medical society or the traditional medical model measures the cortisol level and seeing if they're fatigued is with an ACTH stimulation test. And that ACTH stimulation test, what they do is they give you the hormone ACTH, which is made by the pituitary, and then they go and they check your cortisol levels. And if your cortisol levels rise, then that means the adrenals aren't fatigued. Meaning, if someone knocks on the door and someone's at home and they answer the door, that means there's someone home. If no one answers the door and then there's no one home. Same kind of thing. If you do an ACTH test and there's no response by the adrenals, then that's called adrenal fatigue in the medical society. And there's so many different things that can go wrong with that picture because it assumes that ACTH or the pituitary is working just fine. That's a big problem because we don't know if it is. And in fact, studies show if we have glucose problems, if we have inflammatory cytokines secondary to infections or exposures to toxins and chemicals and detoxification issues, your pituitary is going to be suppressed, and perhaps it's not making a lot of ACTH, and therefore no one's knocking on the door for anyone to answer. But then when you bypass that whole situation and you do a knock on the door and see if anyone home's test is there, and it's negative, you're assuming a lot of things, which is a big problem. That's not even to mention the different times of the day. So back to Gail's question, you can see that he's low in the morning, and again, it represents 1% of your total hormone, and we can't necessarily say in 100% certainty that his total cortisol is low in the morning. But what I would do is I would ask Igal, I would say, hey, tell me how you feel in the morning. Do you feel like you have a tough time getting up? Do you feel like you have a tough time getting started? Because if that's the case, and we talk to the patient, which many doctors don't do, then you'll get a really good idea that this is correlated with his findings. And we can assume that he probably does have a problem. The other thing we can see is that his total amount is low. And we typically call that an HPA problem, meaning the hypothalamus tells the pituitary tells the adrenals, and the adrenals make cortisol. And we can get a pretty good idea that potentially his HPA axis is not working very well. The other thing that we see is he should be pretty much in this design of high in the morning, lower in the middle of the day, lower and lowest. But in Igal's case, you can see he's low, he's high, he's low, and he's the same. So there's a rhythm problem. And when we see a rhythm problem there, that's what the saliva test is really great for. It will tell you the circadian rhythm. And that's another thing to put on what may go wrong with the adrenals that doesn't fit the medical model, in the sense that the output is not being done at the right times. And typically that's a longer standing stress response where the hippocampus, which is in the temporal lobe, which is responsible for your circadian rhythm, is breaking down. And if that's breaking down, then potentially you start to notice other things that temporal lobe is responsible for. So that person has poor memory. Short-term memory is just not doing a great job. Or they have a bad sleep-wake cycle. So they're tired in the morning and they're more ready to go at night. And so I would want to ask Igal, I say, hey, tell me about your life. Tell me about, your sleeping habits. Tell me about what you've done in your career. Have you had a third shift job? Because that really might have messed up your circadian rhythms and your hippocampus. Are you getting exposed to a lot of EMFs every day? This gets beyond telling you what supplement is the best. We're getting into lifestyle. So you can tell a couple things here. I can say, not only does Igal have an HPA problem, then he also has a circadian rhythm problem. And typically when we see both of those things going on, it's more long-standing, and he's got more accumulated stress on the body. The other thing I think of is when he has an abnormal rhythm like that, I think about glucose control. How is your diet? Are you eating a lot of carbs? Do you miss meals? Do you get stressed out very easily? Do you get shaky, lightheaded, and jittery if you've missed a meal? Or do you get do you get sleepy and tired after a meal? Do you crave sweets? Because above all else, I can pretty much tell you he's not balancing his glucose levels very well. And that's a catch-22 in terms of it's a two-way street. He has stress, he doesn't balance his glucose. He doesn't balance his glucose, he doesn't, deal with stress. So it's kind of like a two-way street. So those are the things that I see. So now he asked the questions, which were a little bit hard to interpret just because I think there was a language barrier. But let me see on my phone what his questions were. His questions was, did cortisol, what best supplement can raise the cortisol levels? And that kind of drives me crazy when I hear that. It's like, we are indoctrinated to feel like okay, what can I take to fix this problem? What pill or what supplement is going to lower my blood pressure? What pill or what supplement is going to lower my glucose levels? What pill or what supplement is going to lower my cholesterol? What pill or what supplement is going to help me sleep better? And while there are supplements, which means it's a supplement to your daily living that can be very, very helpful, it's really presumptuous to assume that you can take one thing and it's going to be a magic wand, it's going to fix everything like I dream of genie. It just doesn't work that way. So what I would say is, what's going on with your dietary habits? What's your cholesterol levels like? Because if you're taking a cholesterol lowering medication and doctors are really happy and they're saying, hey, Gal, your cholesterol is at 140, we're really happy, we just got to keep getting it lower and lower, then that's ridiculous, because you need healthy cholesterol to make hormones. And if you don't have that healthy cholesterol to make hormones, then it's not a matter of taking a supplement to raise your cortisol. It's a matter of dietary habits and making sure, A, you're controlling your glucose, because if your glucose isn't stable, which we can kind of see here, and you have some kind of insulin resistance, then you are going to raise your cholesterol levels. But what's going to happen is it's going to be very, very difficult to manufacture optimal levels of hormones. It's a bit difficult, but the bottom line is that what is going on with your cholesterol levels? What's going on with your dietary habits? What's going on with your gallbladder? Are you absorbing healthy fats in order to make healthy hormones? And if you're in a stress response, are you robbing Peter to pay Paul? Meaning, is your cortisol stealing away production from DHEA and testosterone, or is your testosterone aromatizing into estrogen? And I'm not going to see that on here. I need to see a urine test, and that's why we do these different types of tests. But I would say potentially making sure your diet is getting healthy fats, making sure you're absorbing healthy fats, making sure you're not eating too much glucose or sugars or too many meals. What are the stressors in your life? Because at the end of the day, you can have a rowboat and a big hole in your rowing boat, and you can have a little cup, and you can try to say, okay, what supplements are the best to get the water out of my boat? But the bottom line is, how do you patch up the boat? That's the better question. So what are the stressors in your body that have caused your cortisol to be so low? Has it been a major stressor, family history, moldy house, a toxic exposure, physical injuries? All of these types of things are going to be addressed first in order to raise your cortisol level. So don't just think, what supplements can I be taking to raise my cortisol levels? And then he asked the question, if I diet and I supplement and that improves, and then I do a retest, will I see the retest improve? And I would say, yeah, that's why we retest. In fact, it really upsets me when I do consults with people or consults and I look at their test and I say, okay, where's your other test? And they never did another test. I'm like, well, how do we know if you got better or not? And that's really, really important. And when you're only looking at it in this perspective and you're not looking at the cortisol through the blood and through the urine, then you don't really know where the breakdowns are occurring. What is the pituitary an issue? Is the robbing Peter to pay Paul issue? Is your liver detox an issue? Is there other infections that we may be dealing with an issue? Is there a methylation issue, genetic testing, where you're not breaking down hormones, or you're clearing them too quickly, or you're not detoxifying, or you're not repairing your tissues? Is that an issue? So absolutely, if you're not retesting to see that it's improved, then you're not really sure of your protocol, and you're just kind of closing your eyes and throwing crap against the wall and seeing if it fixes, and just using your subjective, feedback as, okay, it must be better than, but we don't know if you don't test. But that's the goal of doing it. How long will it take to recover? It just really depends, because again, what were the reasons why your cortisol was so low? Was it a major infection? Did you have Lyme disease? Did you have mold exposure? Did you have heavy metal toxicities? Are you in a toxic relationship and every single day you go home, your blood pressure rises because the relationship is bad? Do you have a crappy job? Do you have finances? Are you overwhelmed with stress in that regards? Because if that's the case, then it could take a long, long time to fix that. If there's other things going on, it's not going to take as long to fix that. So I can't answer that question. Can someone really recover? Absolutely. If you're not recovering, then you're missing the spot. There's something upstream that is missing. Can someone recover with hydrocortisone? Again, my guess is that you're not addressing all of the things that you need to be addressing. And if that's the case, you are going about it in terms of a very reductionistic approach, meaning take this for that, that for this for that, and that will never be fixed. It just won't. Success stories. I have a lot of success stories. I have different types of success stories. I have success stories with women who have been on bioidentical hormones, and their doctor just keeps putting them up on higher and higher and higher amounts, to the fact that they get really overdosed on that. And then we do a urine test, a blood test, and a saliva test, and we see you're just taking too much hormone. It's not a matter of yelling at a deaf person louder and taking more. It's a matter of fixing the reasons why your hormones were so low in the first place. And that's what we've talked about this entire thing. Then I've had guys that have had low testosterone and they aromatize, or they go down a beta pathway because they've been taking hair growth medication, or even women who have PCOS problems and they are going down the wrong pathways. There are so many success stories to talk about. So anyways, I just wanted to give you a quick little update. I see that there's a lot of questions here, and perhaps I can try to do my best to answer them. So you think this is a cause of fibromyalgia? Again, I would say that the same things that cause the stressors to this would be the same things that would cause the impact on the body for fibromyalgia. So it's a longer story. My saliva was low, my ACTH was normal, of course. I mean, I would like to know what your blood tests look like. I'd like to know what your urine tests look like. I'd like to know what your basic blood work looks like. I'd like to know if there's any major infections, what are your stressors in your life, all of those things. I have lost consciousness because of my low cortisol. What happens there is that it almost becomes like a POTS syndrome, where the adrenals are the signaler of the body to let us know how much stress has accumulated on the body. And when they get to the point where they've lost their ability to output at an optimal amount, an optimal time, in an optimal way, and the hormones quality is bad, and they're not able to get into the cell, and they're not being broken down, and there's little fires all over the body, then they've really lost their regulation of the mechanics of the body, meaning they're not good at controlling the basics, like the autonomic stuff, like increasing your blood pressure when you stand up, or decreasing your pulse rate when you get nervous, or increasing the body temperature when it's cold, or decreasing the body temperature when it's hot. And that's really probably what's going on, Jamie. I'm glad. Hey, Mark, I hope you're doing well, buddy. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. Maybe one of these days I can come up there and see you. Jamie, I'm very sick because of the doctor telling me nothing was wrong. I wake sweating. I think he meant to say sweating. I have a pituitary cyst. I'm on keto. My memory is like having Alzheimer's. I feel like I'm dying. I'm really sorry to hear that. One of the things we try to do when I work with patients is identify all of the stressors that, take an inventory, all the things that are impacting you, and see if you can slowly but surely minimize those things and cross them off your list, but also process them differently as well. I didn't get sick with symptoms until I cleaned a place with mold, and mold is a huge problem. That's where, Igal would say, hey, what kind of supplement would increase cortisol? The supplement that gets the mold exposure, A, out of your body, and B, continuing to impact your body out of the situation. That's a big one. It's not going to be, take licorice root so that you can increase your cortisol, but still live in a moldy house and don't deal with the mold in your body. What kind of test is that one? This one is a saliva test. I don't use the lab that they use here, but it is a saliva test. Hey, Rebecca in New Zealand, hope you're well. What test do we need? It depends. It's a person by person situation. I love it when people tell me that the thing is unreadable, or you're too close to the microphone. I'm sorry that it's unreadable, but if you watch this video over and over and over again, and I take time out of my schedule to make it so that you can listen to something that's unreadable, then be grateful for that. And you know what? Some people, that's the problem, is they're not grateful. And And I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you what it's like. And you know, I tell this out of the bottom of my heart because I care a lot about people. You know, we forget the blessings that we have. And we forget that, you know, life could always be worse. We forget that I could be in a third world country. I could be, knock on wood, in the cancer ward for a child. I could be without my legs. I could be homeless. And I'm worried about this being unreasonable. And my life sucks and it's not fair and yada, 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 yada. And, you know, when you're in a sailboat and wind is hitting you on the face, guess what? You can harness that wind and use it to maybe go sideways and go backwards, but you can use it to gather momentum. And that's a big thing of what I'm finding with people. So that was a bit of love. Hi, doctor. I can read. Good. I'm glad you can read because you know what? One of my celebrations is I got a brand new computer, and it's coming in nicer. I don't have to use my phone anymore. I don't have to put it on a tripod, and I don't even have to reverse it. It's just there, and I thought I can see it too. And maybe that person needs a new computer. I agree. Just be grateful for taking the time to make a video. Anyways, I had a canceled appointment. I'm sorry I've been out of commission. I will do a better job of answering your questions. And once again, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I call myself the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Thank you so much.